This is Scott Spears, and today we examine a sad story. It has been revealed that legendary DJ and voiceover actor Kasem is suffering from the advanced stages of Parkinson's disease. Furthermore, it has been reported that his children and former co-workers are being kept away by his current wife, Jean Kasem. Joining us today to help sort all this out is Casey's longtime agent of more than 35 years, Don Pitts. Don, how are you?
Hey, fine, Scott. And hello to your audience.
Well, I certainly thank you for coming on. I know you're not only a business acquaintance of Casey, but you are a friend.
Oh, yeah, it's been a lot of years.
Don, this story crept up on us yesterday. What's going on?
Well, it's very simple. You know, neither of us are young people. I'm 85. Casey is 81. And as you get older, you know, you are not the sharpest knife in the drawer any longer. And he's pretty well retired from doing any work for, I'd say, maybe 3, 4, maybe up to 5 years, where we were very particular on the jobs that he did take. And unfortunately, he developed Parkinson's, which have many forms of it, and it affects people differently. Michael J. Fox has a severe tremor. It's difficult for him to keep under control, but he can work. And some people may see Michael Fox and see him doing his new TV show and say, oh, that's not really a big deal. And he shakes a little bit. Oh, that's kind of cute. He's kind of cute. Well, it depends how it hits you. And Michael J. Fox has some downtimes that he's doing a lot more than just, you know, shaking like that. Well, he looks kind of cute, believe me. I've never met the man, but I know the disease because my wife has it, okay? Now, the situation with Casey Kasem has been that he has lost his voice. He's lost his power to speak. And it's very, very sad. And talking to him, his mind functions perfectly because you'll talk to him, and by his eyes, he understands exactly what you're saying. And not only that, he'll want to ask you a question or perhaps talk about something that happened 10 years ago. And for him to communicate with you, he will have to... And he got one word out. Well, it takes the poor man with that condition a period of 2 minutes or 3 minutes, an eternity, to even start to structure a sentence. And you're on the other end, and you kind of guess what he's going to ask you. And the problem there is very simple. The brain is very sharp, working very well, but the brain in this Parkinson's situation cannot transmit the thoughts out of the mouth. It's, you know, it's clogged up somewhere back in the brain process. But the brain knows what it wants to do, it knows what it's listening to, and the person with the brain is getting all of that, but it can't transmit out. And I think the worst thing is this frustration of somebody like a Casey who was blessed with a wonderful voice to all of a sudden, wasn't all of a sudden actually, it was getting to, we would be doing sessions and he would have to stop maybe and drink some water or he'd get a bagel, I don't know what that would do. You would think that would clear up his voice a little bit and then he would continue on. But then finally it got so bad that, you know, he couldn't read or get the message out. So that's the situation now physically with him, the Parkinson's, and we have never mentioned that. We've been very, very quiet about that. And if people wanted to use them, we continue to get a lot of calls from advertising agencies who wanted to hire them for campaigns or whatever. And we would just say that, you know, he's pretty much retired, and we would kind of dance around it. But the media picked up that he had Parkinson's, so I don't know how he feels about that, about the media knowing he has Parkinson's. Dick Clark in his final days, when he was doing the New Year's Eve countdown, unfortunately a whole generation will know Dick Clark as an older man who talks kind of funny. But the people my age and 20 years younger remember Dick Clark as a very vibrant, cute guy on TV. But I don't know if that's the way the personality wants to be remembered. But the thing is that, on the other hand, I think it's a blessing that it's known now that Casey Kasem is a product of Parkinson's. And I'm sure that many of your listeners will understand what I am saying. And a lot of your listeners will have friends or relatives who have Parkinson's. And the public has got to know that Parkinson's is more than, I hate to use the word, I can't think of the word. I'm 85. When people are, twirling or, jumping, what is the word I'm trying to say?
Tremors.
Pardon me? Tremoring.
Yes.
God, that's awful. Tremoring. That's my wife's situation. She has extreme tremoring, and now she has trouble neuropathy, and the tremoring sets off the painful neuropathy in the feet, painful, continuous. So this Parkinson thing is very serious, and Casey Kasem now is getting a lot of publicity on the media today. The morning shows, CNN, in fact, CNN gave me a big quote today in the entertainment section about the Parkinson thing, and the public has got to realize that this is more than just the, what did you say?
The tremors.
Yeah, the Twitter. This is the Twitter, yeah. It's more than just that. It depends who you are. And poor Michael J. Fox, he had some very, very serious surgery when he was trying to fight this and keep this undercover. And, that is god-awful what the man is going through. And you only see him at his very best, because I'm sure when he does these TV shows and takes time out, they also do some very big, long editing in the edit room. So, on the one hand, I'm glad that this thing has gone public about Casey Kasem, that the public is aware that, there's many facets of it. And, that's sad, and I've worked with him for all of these years. And I will say a couple of things about him that your audience might be interested in. Of course, the agent talking, the public. I always think of agents, politicians, men of the cloth, and lawyers, and used car salesmen in one bag. Shake it up. I'd rather have lunch with a used car salesman, if you know what I'm talking about, okay? See, when you're 85, you can make these fun statements, and I love doing it. But getting back to Casey Kasem, of all the clients I've ever worked with, and I've worked with all of them, Associated Press ran an article in 1997 saying that Don Pitt's voices has represented everybody from Orson Welles to Mel Blanc in voiceovers. And I've had them all. And so Casey, I will say, stands out because he's the only client I've ever worked with who has never said a bad word about anybody in the business or anything else. After all of this time, never a bad word. And talent usually will badmouth somebody who didn't hire them for the job. One, they'll hire them. They always badmouth their competitor. Well, he's really not very good. But the guy might be the biggest competitor in the business. But, he's really not very good. I just say, well, maybe you're right. I never disagree with him. They're a client. So what can I say? But he has never badmouthed anybody. And Casey Kasem is the type of a person, I'll bring him in for an audition. That's why our business works. You bring in X number of people you think are right for the job. You give them a copy, you record it, and you send it over, MP3 it or whatever, and you send it over to the ad agency, hoping that one of your people will be selected. And there's been countless times that I've brought him in, and he said to me, and this has even happened at a session, where he's going to a session and he's had the booking, and he'll say, I'm really not right for this. You really should get, and he'll come up with a name. Maybe not even a client of mine. He'll come up with a name, and they'll say, well, no, we think it, and he'll say, no, this isn't what, I can't really do a good job for you, and he'll recommend somebody else, and they'll end up bringing that person in. And it is the damnedest thing in the world. I got a call here. I'm going to let it ring. I'll let it ring. But anyway, the media's been calling day and night here since the story broke. But he is just a very, very decent, warm, beautiful guy who thinks that everybody should get along. And I'm not saying that as an agent, because at my age, I really don't give a damn one way or the other what anybody thinks. And if I didn't think that, I just wouldn't say it.
Don, one of the reasons, and I appreciate everything you said there, one of the reasons that we now know that Mr. Kasem does have Parkinson's is because the story that has broke is that his children and his brother and some former associates are not being allowed to see him as of April. Is that true? Have they not been allowed to see him?
I've been told the same thing by the family, and I have no reason not to believe them. I'm not on the firing line. Like I say, as an agent, for the last 40 years or whatever, I've always had a golden rule. As an agent, you never get involved with the client's personal life. Now that goes for politics, religions, a color of their skin, whatever it is. That's none of my business. But I have been told by members of the family, and I have no reason to doubt that that's the situation.
When is the last time that you personally saw Casey?
Or I've been asked that many times, and I don't know the date. I would say anywhere from 6 months to a year.
Have you talked to his wife Jean on the phone?
I talk to her on a fairly regular basis because of business situations that come up. I've got to talk to her because really I can't communicate with Casey. And so I communicate with her. Lately, her phones have been disconnected, and I don't talk to her. I use the email. I email her. And at my age, I figure if you want to talk to me, you'll find my phone number. You go on the internet, you look for Don Pitt's Voices, and you can find me. And you call me. And if I want to talk to you, I'll call you. And the internet to me is a real pain in the neck. I'm an old dinosaur, and everybody, internet. I do have a smartphone, and the only thing I won't have it for is so I can look at the news. But I communicate with her by email, and I get calls from CNN, all the major networks, the morning shows, and she chooses not to make any kind of a statement, and that's what I report back to the media. She's not available to make any statements, and I tell her who's been trying to contact her. She appreciates that, but she's not making any statements.
Don, as we said in the beginning of this interview, you have been one of Casey's friends, not just a business acquaintance. Do you have any guess as to why nobody's being allowed to see him?
No, I really don't. It's the thing is, all of your listeners and you and myself have one thing in common. We all have families, and you start thinking about your family and your friends, and this is not an unusual situation, and you shake your head and you're saying, oh, what's wrong with these people? Why can't they get together? And I don't know, and I don't know what the problem is there. I have no idea, nor do I want to know. And you know what? If I did know, it would be some minor family squabble. And you'd say, "Are you kidding? This thing is? What are they talking about?" And it's in all families. You don't have to look very far. And if it's not with your family, it's your friend's family. So I can't help you there. I wish I could.
No, I do understand. Don, being around everybody all these years, have you ever known any strife between Casey and his children, or the wife and the children?
The children of his first wife, never. Between the children and Casey, and they're all grown now, and they're all adults, and I would say great love. I would have to say he was a guy that always had family first. And he meant that. He really means that. Family first. He's from, he's Lebanese. He's from the old country. And those are his values. He grew up in Detroit. He lived with his mother and father who had a little grocery store. He slept in a cot under the stairwell in a little old house in Detroit. I mean, he had very, very humble beginnings. And I think, he is very, very, very family oriented. That's all I can tell you. So you may have to draw your own conclusion there.
Don, being that, as you said, he can no longer speak, unfortunately, but he is coherent, he is still there.
Very coherent, yeah.
If he knew that this was going on,
he would not. I doubt he would be very happy.
Yeah.
I doubt he'd be very happy.
Unhappy, do you think, because of the whole situation, or?
Yes, I would say the whole situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that his kids are not allowed to see him if they have had a good relationship, and Casey did believe family first. Don, what do you feel should happen? I mean, because you do, it said you can't influence, but you do have communication with his wife. What would you like to see happen?
Well, I would like to see this turned out and let the children, and you call them children. Well, we're talking about people in their late 40s or early 50s, as children, Mm-hmm. You can always say, well, they're not really children, they're adults. Well, you know what? When you're a father, your kids are always your kids. My kids are, they're in their 50s, but they'll always be my kids, and I'll always be their father. If I'm 95 and I'm still alive, I'm their father. I could be a pain in the neck or a sweetheart. I'm still their father, and they're still my kids. And that's the way I see it. But I don't know what the bump in the road is there. And it is not my place to ask, Gene Kasem, what's the problem? That's not my place. And I say the media wants to talk to you, and if you don't want to talk to them, then I talk to them. In fact, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at CNN under entertainment, and they've got all of my quotes in there today on CNN, and the whole thing, the way I feel about it. The whole thing's there under entertainment, under Casey Kasem. But that's. I walk a fine line as an agent, and also a friend, because this is interesting. Your listeners may be interested in this. I'm from San Francisco. I used to be in radio back in the 50s. You can find me again. If you want to put me on the internet, Don Pitts on the air. I was on radio for 10, 12 years up there. And anyway, when I moved down here in 1965 to Los Angeles, I became an agent. And the guy I worked for, I said, well, I don't know anything about being an agent. He said, well, you go to movies? I said, well, yeah. He said, well, you've been in movies, you can be an agent. And I thought you had to go to the mailroom someplace. But anyway, one day, Mike Kerr, who's Lieutenant Governor of California at that time, very big in the music business, sent Casey Kasem over to our office to be interviewed. And the guy I worked for said, well, by the way, Mike Kerr is sending somebody over here to interview. He's a disc jockey at a local radio station, and you want to talk to him. And I said, what's his name? And he said, Casey Kasem. I never heard of Casey Kasem. He was a local guy. And I said, no, I don't know. And he said, well, he's from Detroit, and I don't know, he used to be on the Lone Ranger as a kid. And I said, wait a minute. You say Casey Kasem is from Detroit, and he was on the radio, Lone Ranger on WXYZ out of Detroit? Well, yes, send him up. The reason I wanted him to come up, I wanted to talk to him about the Lone Ranger. I was a little kid. I listened to the Lone Ranger on WXYZ out of Detroit all my life. Well, until I got to be semi-adult or whatever. But I worked with all of these people, and everybody that I knew in radio came out of Chicago, New York, or Hollywood, not Detroit. And I could never figure out why Detroit did the Lone Ranger, one of the biggest radio shows of all time, and all of these actors were also on the Green Hornet and Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. How come these actors all stay in Detroit and they do all of these? They're the only ones. So he came up, and then he explained to me that he was a kid, a young guy, and in college, his professor sent him over to WXYZ because they were looking for some young people to play on the Lone Ranger as the kid parts. It wasn't a regular part. And he went over, and the script he was given by another one of our clients, Dick Beals. Dick Beals was the voice of Speedy Alka-Seltzer 30 years ago. And Casey replaced him on the Lone Ranger. And so then he told me the whole thing about the Lone Ranger, blah, 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 blah. And so before he left, I figured, well, I better give him the courtesy of a read. And I said, here's a piece of copy. Will you read it for me? And I figured it was a typical disc jockey with a sing-song, time and temperature routine, you know, that you hear day in and day out. And he got up to the microphone. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't a disc jockey. This was a guy, I couldn't understand what a wonderful reader he was. He could take one sentence and read it 10 different ways by punctuating it. Now, most people would punctuate by taking a pause, and you think they lost their place. He was an artist at doing this. Then I found out that he always wanted to be an actor. He got into radio simply by luck. And, but he had this wonderful gift. And so I kept bringing him in, and I would say in 60 days he caught on, and the rest was he made millions of dollars doing radio and television commercials. He had the biggest accounts in the country. I'm saying accounts, not just one spot. He did the whole thing, maybe for a year or so. Continental Airlines, General Motors, and then he'd be doing Ford after that because you can't do two of the same for a conflict. Then he was the voice of NBC. Fred Silverman, when he was running NBC, made him the voice of NBC, meaning that he did all of the promos tonight at 9 on NBC. Watch. And at that time, I remember, I think Casey made over $1 million doing promos at scale on NBC. Well, scale, I don't know, is it a couple of $100 or whatever? Well, how can he make that much money? Well, because he did all of them. Now, the thing is, some of the promos he did, I don't think he was right for. He didn't think he was right for either. For light shows, romantic shows, because he really has a mid-range voice. And for a dark, dramatic show that's murder and lust and etc., you should really have a guy with a very strong voice. But Fred Silverman at NBC wanted continuity. That was what it was. And he didn't care. He wanted Casey to do all of them. And he did all of them. Well, the thing is why he made so much money doing them. We didn't have cell phones in those days. Wasn't even thought of cell phones. And he would go in the morning and do all of these promos, maybe 10, 15, 20 or more, and then leave. And then Silverman, during the day, would decide he wanted to do them again. He may wanted to pitch the title of the show, or he may wanted to change it to pitch the actors on the show, or the storyline, or whatever. And then he'd call, and I'd have to find Casey, and, leave messages all over town. And then Casey would go back, maybe at nighttime, midnight, and do another batch. And, Silverman would call him back 2 or 3 times a day. Well, they wanted Casey to move to New York. He wouldn't move to New York. He wanted to stay in Los Angeles. So he just did everything out of L.A. And he didn't even have a parking place at NBC. We used to laugh about that. Here's a guy making this money at NBC. He didn't even have a parking spot. But that's the way it was. Yeah. And I remember where he did the promos. We call them promos. When he did the promos at NBC, it was kind of like it wasn't even an office. It was kind of like a storage room that they kind of cleaned up. There was still stuff in there, and they put a microphone in, and, they had a guy on the other side of the glass, and this is where they did all of their promos. And I thought, and I used to laugh, I said, Casey, can you imagine the guys at the NBC affiliate stations across the country listening to you do these promos? And the guy sitting in the booth is saying, I've got a much deeper voice. I don't know why they use him. I got a stronger voice, too. And we used to laugh about that because those guys are out there across the country. But there's a problem. People with those deep, wonderful voices, they read one of 2 ways, fast or slow. They really do. And there's another 2 ways they read. Well, how do you want it? Do you want it authoritative, or do you want it kind of friendly? And that's it. That's the only way they can do it. But he was like playing a violin, the way he could read a piece of copy.
Don, do you think that if you wanted to see Casey today after this relationship, that you would be allowed to?
I don't know. One of the last times, the last time I saw him was at his daughter's house, and then the time before that, maybe 2 years ago, I saw him at his house, and Jean invited me out for lunch. She made a wonderful lunch for the both of us. And, he could barely talk then. So, no, I don't know. I don't know if that would be me pushing it a little too far. It would be like, I don't know. It would be like if I were friends of you and your wife. I don't know if you're married, but if you are, if I were good friends of you and your wife, and you were having problems, and I said, gee, Scott, do you mind if I come over and see your wife this afternoon? Well, you might be a little upset about me just asking. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, so I don't think I would even ask, because I'm getting into too much of a personal relationship there, and I don't step over that line.
Do you know of anybody besides Jean? Because we obviously know the children are not, and the brother and former employees. Do you know of anybody who gets to visit with him just to keep him entertained?
No. There's only a couple of people I know who are from Detroit. I keep going back to Detroit. That knew him from a kid, because, they're kids. Or when I say kids, they're 17 or 18, to me that's a kid. And I don't know if their phone call, well, that's another situation. They don't have, the phones have been disconnected, and the only way to get her to be able to contact Jean is on the internet. And as I say, I'm an old geezer, and I don't like internet, so I figured you'd want to talk to somebody like you and I are talking now. And if your listeners are getting bored, I hope they're not.
No.
And if they're getting bored, well, they just tune out. It's real simple, And if they like it, God love them, they make it a little louder and tell little Johnny the kid, be quiet, I'm listening to the radio.
Don, it brings up an interesting point. The phones are disconnected. You can't even speak to her by phone anymore. Why has that happened? I mean, what is
I'm told that they have quite a large estate, like 2.5 acres. It's a beautiful, it is a beautiful estate. And there's a big gate to get into the estate, and then there's a thing you punch to get in, right? Apparently somebody ran into that, and the phone lines, I just tell you what I've been told, and you may walk away and say, well, that's kind of fishy. That doesn't add up. I'm just telling you what I've been told, that somebody ran into that, and the phone lines have been knocked out, okay? Well, what about cell phones, okay? Well, the cell phone, if I've called that number, and then that number has been, overloaded or something. I know there's an automatic thing that comes on. I forget what the exact message is. But in other words, it ain't working. Okay? It ain't working. Yeah.
Don, let me ask you one, and I've appreciated this because I think you've been very candid, and I certainly do appreciate that. And I want to end on this question. It's a bit of a personal question.
Yeah.
And it starts on what we've said, that Casey, unfortunately now it has been revealed that he had has Parkinson's, and can't speak anymore. A tragedy for a guy who made his living doing that.
Oh, it is.
But you're his friend, and the stories are wonderful, and we can clearly see that you're his friend. And again, we don't know why the phones have been disconnected. We have the story and email and all that. Mm-hmm. Knowing for sure that his 3 kids, his brother, his co-workers, you yourself have not been in the same room with him for, they say since April, you say 6 months to a year since you've seen him.
Yeah.
Does that sadden you for your friend that he's, for lack of a better term, besides his wife, alone at this point?
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It concerns me that he's out of contact. He's out of contact. And, that does bother me.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, you say, well, I can't pick up the phone and call him because he can't talk to me. you know.
Yeah.
Or, bless his heart, you know, yeah, it does bother me. Yeah, I wish I could, you know, I haven't tried to see him. I have not pushed that. And then I might, let me put it this way, and then I might be, persona non grata if I push that. So I don't, and I just make phone calls to him, and I talk to his wife, and everything goes through Jean, and we are, I would say, on a very friendly, business-like plateau, or whatever you wish to call it.
That marriage, as I understand it, Don, is in its 33rd year. Is that a good marriage? Was Casey, last time you knew, happy with that?
Oh, with his present marriage?
Yes.
He seems to be. He seemed to be. You know, I can't. No, he seems to be. That's all I can tell you. I don't know. You know, when you walk out of the room, you never know what goes on, do you?
Right. Well, I tell you.
I leave it with that.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, and it's sad because, as you say, I think we all feel that it's not necessarily placing blame on the wife. It's just that it's too bad that he can't, even though he can't speak, can't see people, because he seemed like such a personable guy. And I really do hope, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think his kids feel that at least people will be able to visit him if these are, you know, the end stages, unfortunately, of what has been an amazing life.
Yeah, and the thing is, with the kids, believe me, this is of love and not of a financial gain, you know. And, you know, they just want to be able to talk to their father. And, you know, but, yeah, it has nothing to do with financial gain at all, because they're all independent, and they're not, that isn't even part of the program.
So Don, and it's obviously conversations, I keep trying to wrap it up here, and I will after this one, but so you really do feel that if Casey were told, obviously he can't speak, but we're told, and maybe he does see news, I don't know if the television's on there or not, he would be ticked by this, do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that he would feel very badly, yeah, because, you know, he's from the old school, and, you know, family is everything, you know. He is from the old school. He always will be from the old school, you know. And, yeah, I think that he would be upset.
Well, then we certainly all do hope that, for whatever reason, that this gets resolved and Jean is able to open up the doors.
I hope so, too. I really hope so.
Well, Don, again, your candid nature has been very much appreciated today. I certainly appreciate you for coming on. And if you do get invited or happen to talk to somebody, give Casey our best. And
I will. I will.
He's definitely a legend.
Your listeners, hey, that's great. And now, okay, listen, Scott, it was really fun talking to you. And, you know, I'll tell you, your listeners are very lucky to have you aboard, because you're a very thorough guy, and you're a heck of a professional broadcaster.
Well, I thank you, Don. Coming from you, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.